Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the channel. It's a pleasure to meet you. Today I have another episode of Genre Makers. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of this is a series where I go into various different games that either started or redefined genres as we know them. And today I want to go into a particular genre that's kind of niche, but that I think fits as one that it either defined or popularized a more niche genre. That's Shining Force. We'll talk a little bit about the story of the game, how it played, and games that came after it. So, if you have a minute, sit back and hang out a while as we dig into strategy RPGs and Shining Force in general. Now, Shining Force was published by Sega for their popular Genesis console in 1992. This was a tactical turn-based RPG follow-up to their dungeon crawler Shining in the Darkness. The game follows the tale of Max and a small team known as the Shining Force, who are on their quest to prevent the evil Cain who commands the hordes of Runefaust from resurrecting the Dark Dragon. The Dark Dragon itself is sort of an overall entity of darkness in the world that was locked away 1,000 years ago by the Forces of Light. The Forces of Light are now represented, obviously, by the Shining Force itself. Overall, it's not the most in-depth or grandiose story in the RPG world, but it did suffice to set the background for much of the story. Throughout the story, you'll gain new members to your ranks, some being optional and some being part of the story. None of them really do much to enhance the story itself, but primarily give you more units and more flexibility in how you approach each game scenario. However, I know you're asking, how did this game play? Well, since you asked, let's take a look. Shining Force at its core is an RPG game with strategy-style combat. What do I mean by that, you ask? Well, simply put, the game has a story much like a standard RPG with towns you can explore and people you can talk to, along with an overworld that you can explore at times to find extra items and gather intel. However, all of the combat took place in a more traditional turn-based strategy game style. Well, sort of traditional. You see, it added a few things that many early strategy games didn't, and that it had these nice battle scenes that would play out between the two characters when they entered into combat. This gave the encounters more weight and a cinematic feel. The other thing it had is, well, to be honest, a frustrating attack rotation. Speed and agility would generally determine how fast you moved, along with random multipliers on the enemy side and a bonus to their chance to move after you took damage, and another random element baked into the game. This often left you sometimes feeling like you might never get a turn, or sometimes you get multiple turns in a row. This added primarily to the difficulty of the game in a fairly significant way, at least in my opinion. Outside of that, you had a lot of your standard fare with flying units being unhindered by terrain, harsh terrain affecting the movement of your centaur units, pretty dramatically in fact, and each unit having their own allotment of spells and abilities and perks that affected their attack range and movement in the game, much like other strategy RPGs you might know. Reception to the game overall was met with positive reviews. It topped the charts in April of 1992 when it released, and pretty much everyone praised the graphics and the battle mode, and also noted that it was very accessible for an RPG. Now, I'm not fully sure I completely agree with that statement, given some of the randomness, but the basic understanding of the mechanics and movement would tend to be more accessible than some of the deeper combat systems that are out in other RPGs around the time, so maybe? Shortly after this release, though, many more games started to come out. Not only in the series, as there were two follow-up games, another one on the Genesis and one on the Saturn, but other games like Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics, and many, many more would see releases. Fire Emblem, which actually had come out before the series, would gain even more popularity and become an even bigger franchise than it was already. However, what do you guys think? Do you think this game actually serves as a catalyst for this kind of game genre? Were you impressed with how accessible it was? Did any of you struggle with some of the randomness like I did? What games of this type do you enjoy, if any at all? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, if you don't mind, please leave this video a like. Also, if you see more of my stuff you enjoy, consider following the channel. That actually does help me out quite a bit. Till we meet again though, have a great rest of your day, and happy gaming.